Traditional knowledge is inclusive of "knowledge" and expressions of culture .
Why isn't traditional knowledge just knowledge?
The Eurocentric vision of non-Western ways of knowing has been challenged by Western philosophers of science and by scholars who have studied the basic notions of traditional science. Objective science is an illusion. What is considered to be a fact is essentially an agreement by a group of scientists.
So traditional knowledge isn't knowledge because scientists cannot agree if it is in fact knowledge?
The modern myth of rationalism and objective thinking is becoming increasingly destructive for the majority of the world's people. Indigenous and non-indigenous. There is no sound basis for deciding that one worldview is superior. We must prepare pathways for science to accept the truth from other worldviews.
What do you mean by truth? How do we arrive at truth without knowledge? Are you saying traditional knowledge cannot help us find truth?
In 2004, the World Bank declared that everybody has cultural liberty. It is the right of each people to choose and create its own culture.
You are not answering any of my questions. Why is the World Bank declaring that peoples have the right to create and choose their own culture?
Each culture has a right to understand the world through their own ways of knowing. In the end, it is the responsibility of science to provide the knowledge needed for sustainable living for the culture it is serving. Knowledge is power. Power is money. Traditional knowledge is an object.
Traditional knowledge is an object?
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. For the sake of this conversation, let's assume that traditional knowledge is really just a gloss for knowledge. What is the point of having this discussion?
Traditional knowledge is at risk of being appropriated and exploited commercially by people who have no respect for intellectual property.
So traditional knowledge is an object that is also intellectual property.
For the sake of continuing this discussion, traditional knowledge which is not known as knowledge is an object which may be eligible for legal protection as intellectual property. Yes.
You are saying that traditional knowledge as an object may be eligible for legal protection if it is the intellectual property of a person?
Or a community.
Based on what I understand, traditional knowledge is tangible and intangible.
Yes, traditional knowledge is intangible and tangible. But in the matter of intangible traditional knowledge, it is not within the intangible or intellectual matters protected by intellectual property law and the World Intellectual Property Organization or WIPO.
But that is traditional knowledge according only to the WIPO.
According to WIPO, traditional knowledge is folklore, TK, innovations in practices, music, songs, and dance, graphics, designs, crafts, textiles and paintings, and signs and symbols linked with a community. Significantly, traditional knowledge is not simply a collection of intangible items or features. Rather, it is the integration of these features into a cultural system, past and present and future, secular or religious, useful or aesthetic, and generally known or observed selectively within a community. It is not static knowledge. Creativity and innovation are continuing and current.
Why did the WIPO define traditional knowledge that way?
The World Intellectual Property Organization WIPO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. It is dedicated to developing a balanced and accessible international intellectual property system, which rewards creativity, stimulates innovation and contributes to economic development while safeguarding the public interest.
So the WIPO protects intellectual property?
No.